Good morning and welcome to the June 14th, 2023 Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will go to Jennifer Vega to explain public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. During citizen comment, members of the public Sorry, this is a new system for me. During citizen comment, members of the public may address the subcommittee for up to 3 minutes on issues of interest or concern to them. The Arizona Open Meetings Law permits the subcommittee members to listen to the comments but prohibits members from discussing or acting on the matters presented. Members of the public may speak for up to 2 minutes to comment on agenda items to be discussed. Comments must be related to the agenda item and the action being considered by the subcommittee. The City Council and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending investigations, claims, or litigation.
Thank you so much. And do we have our interpreter?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Elsie Duarte. I will be servicing as the Spanish interpreter for today's Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee session. I will now take a moment to introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience and review some guidelines. Buenos días, bienvenidos a la sesión del Subcomité de Seguridad Pública y Justicia. Mi nombre es Elsie Duarte y estaré sirviéndoles hoy como intérprete a nuestra audiencia de habla hispana. Deseamos pedirles antemano, si va a dar un comentario público, por favor hable despacio, con claridad y evite tener distracciones de fondo. Finalmente, hago una pausa después de cada una o dos oraciones para poder interpretarle lo que esté diciendo de la manera más completa posible. Gracias. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. So we are going to make a slight adjustment in the order we take things this morning, and we are going to switch 6 and 7. So the drone update will become item 6, and train derailment will become item 7. The first order of business is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we do actually have someone on for call to the public.
I apologize. I knew that. I have public comments. We have our first virtual speaker is I believe Rivko Knox.
Hello? Can
Hello?
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning. My name is Rivko Knox. I'm a longtime resident of Phoenix. I've lived here since 1966, actually in the same house, and I now live in District 1. I've been active in a lot of political and both partisan and nonpartisan organizations. I've only focused on Phoenix issues on rare occasions and thought it was time I learned more about how my city operates. So as I think public safety and justice are key elements that should always work in tandem to improve the lives of Phoenix residents, I've been observing the subcommittee since January. I'd like to speak today on 2 issues, both of which I think relate to this subcommittee. They are the newly released Phoenix Police Crime Reduction Plan and the recently released draft of the updated revised use of force policy. Both, I think, are issues that this subcommittee should focus on and oversee. I urge you to have presentations, reports, and both in your next few meetings. Specifically, I believe that crime reduction and public safety require collaboration between government and the community throughout every stage of the system, and policing practices should build trust and positive community relationships through public engagement with community members. Specifically, I'm asking, and I would hope that the committee will have presentations on this soon, regarding the crime reduction plan. What community outreach has been undertaken by the police, Phoenix PD, in the development of this plan? And what community feedback will Phoenix PD request as it implements its plan? And I hope that that kind of information will come before your subcommittee. And secondly, regarding the use of force, I know that a public comment period is taking place right now, but there are several comments, and I will be submitting my own comments, but I wish the plan, the use of force, indicated what the changes were, whether DOJ has been asked for comments, and how it relates to similar policies in other cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments, ma'am. And then our second speaker is Rafilwe Gridhalda.
Madam Chair, that's for agenda item
2.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 2 is body worn cameras, contract amendments, and for that item we have Police Assistant Director Jesse Cooper.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Jesse Cooper, Assistant Director with the Police Department. I oversee our Technical and Support Services Division, which manages our body-worn camera program for the department. Our current contract expires with Axon in February of 2024. We have deployed cameras to every sworn member of our department, as well as those professional staff that are forward-facing. So to continue the use of the BWCs as well as the capture of the video, we do require this contract to remain in place. New features that we're receiving in this will help meet the need for a couple of strategic plans and recommendations that were made to us. 2021 Gartner recommended for the police department a cloud-based storage for some of our digital evidence in management, and a 2002 BJA technology assessment also recommended we move in this direction with cloud storage. Some new features that we will receive with the Axon body is that we will have unlimited third-party storage, which is essentially all video, audio, photos, anything in a digital format we will be able to maintain and use as our digital evidence solution. This allows us to efficiently share this digital evidence with our justice partners and with other agencies. Two things that are going to be very citizen-focused will be Axon Capture and Axon Community Request. These are two functions that will allow the public to upload photos, video, audio, anything that they need related to their case directly to the police department without having to provide it to us in an alternative format. Officers can send them a direct link to send that up to the cloud for us. And then Axon Capture will allow officers to use their department-issued smartphone devices to capture photos, video, and audio, which will increase our efficiency. The cloud services that we're going to, there's redundant data centers in disparate locations within the United States where this is stored by Axon. They will use Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services to do that. There's data backup and recovery strategies, so all of our digital evidence will be redundant and stored separately. This is safer for us than keeping it on premise and reduces the cost to us. Secure data is based on industry standards. It is CJIS compliant, it is encrypted, and it is protected. This will be a 5-year term. During this term, we will receive 2 camera and dock refreshes, which means we will get their latest cameras. We just deployed the Axon Body 3 about a year ago, and so we'll be looking forward to the Axon Body 4 and 5 over the course of this 5-year term, and the total is $39 million for the 5 years. So staff requests the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee recommend approval by the Phoenix City Council of the amendments to the city's body-worn camera contract during the formal council meeting on June 28th, 2023.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions? Councilman Waring?
No, I do not have any questions.
Okay, then do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve?
Second? I second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Oh, I forgot my public comment person on number 2. Was he on? Yes, okay,
Yes.
we will take public comment. I apologize.
Hi, my name is Rafilwe. I want to start with, I think it's pretty egregious to have taken a vote before hearing public comment on the item. I've referred to City Council a few times now with mishandlings of justice directly related to the Phoenix Police Department, including the murders of Dorothy Dale Chambers, Joseph Gutierrez, Jacob Harris, and the mishandlings of justice by the Special Investigations Unit, that this council would give $40 million to a department that is under investigation, rightfully so, for its mishandlings of justice, I think, again, is quite egregious.
Thank you for your comment. All right, item number 3 is Phoenix Community Court, and for this item, we have Deputy City Manager Gina Montez, Judge Don Taylor, City Prosecutor Esteban Gomez, Public Defender David Ward, and Homeless Solutions Deputy Director Scott Hall joining us. And we will hear the presentation, and then we have a public comment on this one as well.
Let everyone get settled and we'll get started, Madam Chair.
Did we get everybody?
Looks like it.
All right, welcome all.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We're very pleased to be before you this morning to provide a proposal and recommendation for the creation of the Phoenix Community Court. The city, as you know, has been working really with the support of the City Council to put in place multiple strategies and interventions to address homelessness in our community. And this is a major component that will assist justice-involved, unsheltered people in Phoenix. The court has multiple existing therapeutic courts, and the community court is an exciting new opportunity to provide pathways to assist people in ending their homelessness. And we're real excited to provide you this information this morning. I'd like to turn the presentation over to Judge Taylor to provide additional background and kick us off.
Madam Chair, members, good morning. Glad to be here this morning. Just a little bit of context. So we talk about therapeutic courts, we talk about specialty courts. Another name you'll hear is problem-solving courts. Really all names for the same approach, and something that is a relatively new approach for courts in the criminal justice sphere. Really over the last 10 to 20 years, we've seen an explosion across the country in the number of these courts that all deal with particular defendants within the criminal justice system that really have some unique needs and that are truly unique, different from many others who are in the system. And the whole idea is that the collaboration of the justice system partners, the prosecutors, the public defenders, bringing in peer support, bringing in other organizations, all with an eye towards crafting some individualized plans for those people that really get at some of the root causes. That kind of collaboration, that kind of high touch really leads to better outcomes in individual cases. We have been operating some specialty courts here in Phoenix for about the last 10 years formally. A couple of them that are pretty well known. The Veterans Court I know you're familiar with. Several of you have been over and seen how it works. Really grew up out of the need to address the unique challenges that veterans faced, particularly the explosion in the number of veterans coming back from the more recent wars and some of the issues that they faced. And so Veterans Court was a challenge to really meet them where they are. The Behavioral Health Court, people who have mental health issues, sometimes behavioral health issues with regard to addiction or substance abuse, also face unique challenges when it comes to successfully navigating the criminal justice system. We have had a behavioral health court since 2015. Again, much better engagement we find of the individuals in there. Much better outcomes for those individuals as the team works collaboratively to come to solutions. Phoenix is also one of the founding members of the Maricopa County Regional Homeless Court. I want to make sure that we understand that the Regional Homeless Court does not address the issues that we're here talking about today. The Regional Homeless Court is really an effort that grew up out of the need for people who may be homeless or unsheltered at this time, who have previous engagement with the criminal justice system. So in many instances, they've had previous fines. Particularly several years ago, there used to be a lot of license suspensions, the kinds of things that really created barriers to people being able to make forward progress. And so that court is focused on helping those individuals who've had criminal justice involvement in the past and now face these languishing issues. What we're going to talk about today is how to apply some of these to a population of people that is not currently covered for the most part by those particular courts. And I'm going to turn it over at this point to Esteban Gomez from the prosecutor's office.
Good morning, Madam Chair, council members. When unsheltered members of our community are facing minor charges in the traditional criminal justice system, they may experience barriers to resources and services like reliable housing, shelter, treatment, and counseling services. Criminal convictions can hinder one's ability to establish housing and treatment. This situation could lead to greater levels of reoffending. Therefore, staff recommends the establishment of the Phoenix Community Court. The Community Court will provide access to resources that will allow a more deliberate and robust approach to finding and implementing alternative solutions for treatment and finding reliable shelter, housing. I'm going to turn over the presentation to Scott. Oh, to Mr. Ward, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, members of council, I'm David Ward. I'm the director of the Public Defender's Office, and we're really excited to be involved with this process. And we believe that the establishment of this community court will be able to assist our clients, those people who have been charged in misdemeanor court, and the city to help these individuals overcome the kind of unique issues that actually cause and make their situation worse. We believe through this process we'll be able to establish stable housing, to receive assistance to addiction, which is one of the biggest problems they have, is addiction. And then the second part is mental health, and this will also be able to hook people up and to expose them to mental health professionals and the services that they need. The idea at the end is to help them not only overcome their homelessness, but also overcome the underlying issues that are causing it and making it worse, and then which causes this cycle of law breaking and contact with the criminal justice system. So I think in the end, the idea is to break that cycle, and this is a tool I believe we all work together and we believe will work to achieve that goal. The goal is to provide long-term solutions that will positively impact individuals currently experiencing homelessness through a holistic and compassionate approach that benefits the entire community. We understand that that it's going to be a forceful action. Action has to be taken. We understand that. Even as the public defenders, we understand that. What we're asking for is that we have compassionate force. We also have forceful compassion, that we're moving forward with some active measures to help them break this cycle and to get out of the homelessness, the drug addiction, and alcohol addiction, and with mental health.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it is with a lot of excitement and tremendous gratitude I sit here today with this request. Too often those without resources, support, and guidance cycle through our justice system simply because the right resources aren't in place. This community court will empower individuals to see the different paths available to them that can inspire them to end the cycle of recidivism through the criminal justice system. This program will create hope and a true pathway for their goals in life. A lot of times when you have nothing, you aren't afraid of losing everything. But I can tell you through my experience working in this field and my personal experience, when you feel the support of the court and ultimately the support of the city of Phoenix, you can stand a little taller and take a scary step forward knowing that you have people in your corner. This program isn't about taking away accountability. It is about supporting people while they're in the process of being accountable to their actions and helping build life skills and confidence in a new way that is sustainable. This process starts here, with us today. With us, the city of Phoenix, acknowledging that we can do better and that we can meet this challenge together. The challenge of meeting people where they are at, understanding why they're here, and helping them get to where they want to go in life. A disproportionate amount of people cycling through the justice system report currently experiencing homelessness. Once an individual has received a citation and has an initial court appearance or an arraignment, prosecutors will identify whether a person will qualify for community court. Once identified for community court, OHS, the Office of Homeless Solutions, and its partners will engage these individuals and connect them to the appropriate resources that can help end their homelessness. Additionally, OHS will engage directly with individuals that are identified in the jail system that are experiencing homelessness, that have historically been underserved, and assist them with navigation and other appropriate homeless services. Once an individual is participating in community court, a customized service plan will be developed in partnership with the court. These service plans will be individualized based on the person's needs and will be revisited with all parties each time the individual has a scheduled appearance in court. Those needs can include, but are not limited to, shelter, housing, treatment, mental health services. Sorry, lost my place. Physical health needs, family reunification, family assistance, workforce opportunities, basic public benefits, and obtaining identifications. Too often, people have small financial barriers that can obstruct an individual's path to success. Rapid response dollars are part of this request and will be available to individuals that have financial barriers inhibiting their ability to successfully achieve housing, employment, and their personal goals. These flexible funds can be used to cover minimal expenses such as application fees, deposits, and other minor expenses, and will be rapidly deployed when needed. Once participation in the community court program is complete, outcomes can include graduation from the program or a return to traditional court if unsuccessful with community court. The key performance measures in this program will include the number of people participating and reaching a successful graduation, the number of people successfully placed in temporary or permanent housing, the number of people not reentering the justice system in Phoenix, and the number of people not returning to the homeless services system. The Office of Homeless Solutions and I are incredibly excited to get this underway and begin the work ahead to make this program a true success. I will now turn it over to Deputy City Manager Gina Montez to summarize the recommendations and this request.
Thank you, Scott. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this effort is a pretty large one. We have a large volume of cases, and so I'm going to outline the recommendations and the resources that we're requesting in order to implement the community court. First, it will be the request for an additional 11 city positions, and these positions include, I'll summarize by department. First, the public defender. These will be staff dedicated for each of the defendants assigned to the court, including liaisoning some of those casework services. It includes an assistant city attorney, legal assistant, and casework service coordinator. In the prosecutor's office, additional staffing will also ensure coverage, and this proposal is to support 2 days of court and 2 days of case preparation per week. This would be 2 attorneys, 3, a legal clerk, legal assistant, and administrative assistant 2. Finally, in the municipal court, assisting the judges with coordinating the flow of court cases and hearings, as well as of developing statistical tools to measure outcomes. That will include 2 bailiffs. And just to go back up to the top, I noted casework services coordinator. That would be under one city staff under the Office of Homeless Solutions to coordinate. In addition, there will be 10 contracted navigator positions. So the funding would be for a contractor, a partner to assist with the navigation. And then to establish a rapid response funding source. And Scott briefly referenced this in his remarks. This will enable us to assist in small items that present huge barriers to people experiencing homelessness. And then finally, the purchase of equipment and administrative items for an annual cost of $2.3 million, one-time cost of $45,000. The timeline for the implementation, this is the first milestone, would be to seek the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee approval. And then, assuming there would be approval, we would move to the June 28th formal City Council meeting and request approval at that time. Between August and December of this year would include hiring, training, and implementing the process. And then finally, ultimately, the launch of the Phoenix Community Court in January of 2024. So with that, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, staff requests the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee recommend the full council approve the establishment of the Phoenix Community Court for annual estimated cost of $2.3 million and one-time costs of $45,000 at the June 28th, 2023 formal meeting. And we're available for questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Of course, Councilman Waring.
Thank you. So a day or two ago, a city staffer was coming back from lunch to find a person defecating right outside City Hall over by the Orpheum. So while I understand people might be struggling to make rent, while I might understand that people may not have the access to the bathrooms that people would like, doing it where this person was doing it kind of flies in the face of thousands of years of civilization. I mean, so would that person, had they been caught, and for all I know, because the city staffer did report it immediately to police, maybe they did get caught, but just hypothetically, if they got caught, are they eligible for this court?
Who wants to take that question?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, the answer is probably. And I know that's not a great answer. And I say that because at the end of the day,
no, it's not.
The gatekeeper to this program is the prosecutor's office. And they're going to be looking at each of these cases on an individualized basis and determining whether or not this is an appropriate place for that particular individual given the context to go forward. And they may or may not decide that it is. I can tell you largely we expect this court to be filled with what are often similar to that, really the sort of quality of life issues that are prevalent. So we know, for example, that among those people who are cited into the court who also happen to be homeless, the lion's share of those are trespassing charges. We know that they include significant numbers of things like shoplifting charges and some others. So while there is no hard and fast, no, this particular person or this particular crime can never be eligible, there is going to be, I think, some very serious filtering on the front end done, particularly by the prosecutor, to make sure that any individual who finds himself in community court is appropriately there.
Councilman Waring, to your point, I would just want to ask a clarifying question, because I think that there are limits to who would be eligible. There are some crimes, if committed, would make folks ineligible for this. Could you please talk about a couple of those crimes that they would not be considered for this program?
Yes, Madam Chair, council members, we'd be looking at their criminal histories. We'd be looking at the particular facts of a particular case, whether or not victims are involved, restitutions involved, the types of injuries, if there's any, the types of damage, if there's any, and of course, their criminal history. Is it aggravated? Is there some sort of threat to safety, community safety, that nature? So what we're looking at is trying to identify those cases where somebody needs that assistance, needs that help, get out of this cycle and try to move them towards receiving that appropriate treatment and hopefully getting their records in place like identification, birth certificates, that nature, so that they can hopefully find reliable housing and shelter.
And Madam Chair, to be specific, there are two areas of criminal offenses that would be immediate disqualifiers, while the rest of them, are really on a case-by-case basis, which are domestic violence offenses and assaults. And that's specifically because of the relationship to a direct victim versus, a business being a victim or something of that nature.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you for your explanation. Okay, Councilman Waring.
Madam Chair, can I continue?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So clearly this person, I don't know how far gone they might be on drugs or alcohol. I'm not presuming that they are, but really they know they're not supposed to be going to the bathroom out in public where people just walking by can see them. So really at that point, you're pretty much intentionally trying to sort of wreck the quality of life for everybody else, or certainly at least wreck their lunch. Now, I get that there is a shortage of bathrooms or maybe not access to bathrooms, but this person could have gone. There's no shortage of little nooks and crannies where they could have at least tried to disguise what they were doing, but it sounds like wound up doing it right out in the open, in full view, knowing what they were doing. At least that's what was relayed to me. I have no reason to question that. So at some point, behavior like that is so outrageous, should not be eligible for this. You know what you're doing, and you're just trying to be a general pain, or I guess make some sort of statement or whatever. The book should be thrown at you, and that's it. There should be no discussion. You reap what you sow, and you get what you deserve when you're acting like that. So, yes, Judge, you accurately predicted that I would be disheartened to find out that that person would be eligible. I certainly hope your prosecutors have more sense than to say, oh, yeah, you know what, a little therapy and everything will be good in this case, because clearly that's not true. Second, maybe Gina can speak to this. If memory serves from a week or two ago, when the cleanups were happening, I can't remember on 11th Avenue or 12th Avenue, but one of those, didn't one of the people pull a knife on our officers and cleanup crews?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, there was one individual who did have a knife, and it was brandished when one of our staff, our city staff, was continuing to engage with them and trying to assist them to enter shelter or safe indoor space.
So, Madam Chair, I was curious to read, I don't have the article in front of me, but I recall that in the article, I think city PIO or some such said something about, but we're still going to try to get this person appropriate services. Appropriate services? A prison cell, if the alleged behavior is what actually occurred, and that's proved in court, that's the appropriateness for pulling a knife on another person who's trying to do their job. Is there any disagreement with the folks at the table about that? Because I'm not sure what services would be provided. That implied to me that this person was just going to go on their merry way. Is that actually what happened in that case? And what am I supposed to tell people when they ask me about stuff like this, if that's true?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, in the situation that you referenced, the individual, it was addressed from the criminal side initially, and so what our PIO was referencing was that that individual is likely in need of other services, and very well we're sure he was in need of other services, and so as the justice process proceeds, we will ultimately not want that individual returning to homelessness if we can assist him to get off the streets as part of that process, following that process. So I understand what you're saying. We are in no way saying that something like that happens, that, oh, we're just going to send them to services. That is in addition to whatever the justice system results in for that individual.
So, Madam Chair, I hope you can understand. It sounds like you understand what I'm saying. Anybody reading that would probably, nobody did, amazingly, but anybody reading that might plausibly ask their city councilman, have you people lost your minds? Won't that person be serving years in prison? I know there have been a lot of changes, which I wholeheartedly am against, but I know there have been a lot of changes in, how long you're going to serve. If you, certainly in other states there have been, if you commit some heinous violent act, you can probably be out in the street that night. But shouldn't that person be in jail for a fairly lengthy period of time? Am I missing something?
Councilman Waring, David from the Defender's Office would like to respond.
Madam Chair, Mr. Waring, as the Public Defender's Office, I want a couple things clear. First off, if you pull a knife on somebody, it's going to be a felony, and that's outside of our court. They're not going to go into homeless court or community court on that. They're going to go to felony court. That'd be an aggravated.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be an aggravated assault, and it's outside of what we were doing. One of the things that I really would like clear is that, if I just take a moment, is when we talk about services, for instance, with your earlier case where the person acted inappropriately defecating in public, it's horrific, and we understand that that's horrific. And we say we're going to try to get them to services. I think that the word services sometimes is hidden. People think of euphemistically, we're going to give them a pat on the head, a cookie, and an apology. That's not what services looks like. The judge, with all due respect, Your Honor, was too modest when he said that Veterans Court is effective. Our Veterans Court is the flagship of Veterans Courts in the country. It's one of the best. We have many, many people go through Veterans Court who come in and do similar acts. They're veterans. Let me assure you, when we say they give them services, it's not a cakewalk. These people have to go in, they have to go to counseling, they have to behave, they have to play by the rules. Their lives are very structured for a very long time, sometimes for a couple of years. They have to earn everything they get. Judge Hudson, in his remarks when he does a graduation, he gives them a coin. He said, I'm not giving you anything. You had to earn this. You earned this through hard work. You earned this by doing what you're supposed to do, by going to counseling, by going to therapy, by getting a job, by having steady housing, by getting along with people, by becoming a member of society. Oftentimes the cases get dismissed, but not always. Sometimes the state will still say, you've had way too many shoplifts, you've had way too many times you violated this, and so you still have to have consequence. And so that will still be accepted, at the same time getting them services. I think that we sometimes have a disservice to people by saying we're getting them into services. What we're really doing is pressing them into a new way of life that is sometimes very difficult for them. So I do understand your concern. And no, we haven't lost our minds. What we're really trying to do is say, if we can put them in jail, and if it's a misdemeanor, we're going to put you in jail for 6 months. When they get out of jail with 6 months, they will literally have almost nothing less than what they had before, because now they just have to find more stuff to put in their basket. So by the alternative to that is to say, look, we're going to help you find a way to exist in society in a way that does not include defecating in front of City Hall.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I don't think I said you guys lost your mind, but I do think someone might rightly ask me if we collectively have.
I understand. I hope I didn't destroy you.
Again, I didn't exactly know what I would say should somebody ask me, because I would be wondering the same thing myself. I'm glad you clarified that this behavior wouldn't be eligible for the court, but I have to say it was rather, it was kind of thrown out, well, this one person pulled a knife and brandished it, but then they're going to get services. And I understand what you're saying. Maybe the services are hard. But if you say to someone, just a normal member of the public who's paying taxes and not committing a bunch of crimes every day and hasn't shoplifted anything and so forth, you say, well, you know, the 10th time, maybe they'd have to serve a little time instead of getting counseling. They're not going to equate counseling with a punishment when the context is, shouldn't they be in jail? So with all due respect, most people are not going to look at it that way and go, oh, that makes sense. Because if they happen to be downtown and they happen to be the ones who saw the defecating, they're going to think the city has descended into complete anarchy. And if you venture a little west of downtown, you could easily argue that they're correct. So, I just, maybe we should be happy more people don't venture downtown, but I absolutely think seeing somebody go to the bathroom like that is going to make an impression. Now, the stakes are fairly high because for all we know, there was some hedge fund guy who was going to invest a few $1 billion was coming to meet with Chris Mackey and walked by that and said, you know what, maybe I'll go somewhere else. Debatable whether they could find a city where that same behavior isn't going to happen, but, who knows? So I've seen enough around City Hall after a council meeting. Frankly, I thought I was going to get in a fist fight right outside City Hall because a homeless guy started screaming obscenities at me. I was confused because I was just walking away from a council meeting and, I had never interacted with this person. He was about my size, pretty big guy, actually. He ran right through traffic to reach me. Fortunately, a police officer saw it and the chase ensued and yada, yada. That was a couple of years ago. It definitely left an impression. And it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not like it was the dead of night. So the impression that we're making at City Hall is we have completely lost control of everything. So that's my frame of reference. We can have a frame of reference where some treatment's going to clean some of this up, but it hasn't so far. The situation appears to be demonstrably worse. Anybody who wants to take issue with that claim, well, we can just drive around a little bit down there and see what everybody thinks. It certainly looks a lot worse than it did even a couple of years ago, and certainly dramatically worse than 10 years ago. So I hope this helps. I'll be supportive, but I will be the first one to complain if I hear that behavior like I've described is winding up in this court and we're just sort of, well, you know, hopefully they'll turn it around. That's not what this should be for. If it's going to streamline the process and maybe get the services to people faster, that might actually help, fine. But it is very disheartening to see what's been going on. So I'll stop there, Madam Chair. I may have something else later.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. Vice Mayor Ansari.
Thank you. And I'll start by saying, just to provide a little bit of a different perspective, I live in downtown, I work in downtown, spend most of my time downtown, and I would just say that I have also seen individuals defecating, I've been yelled at, et cetera, but my first reaction would not be, let's make sure this person rots in prison for 6 months. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. I think my first reaction, and that of many of my constituents, would be this person needs mental health support. This person needs detox facilities. This person might need housing. So I think we need to think beyond the incarceration system. It's not a solution to everything, and I'm excited about this program because I think it provides a lot of opportunity. And Scott, you spoke a little on this, but you and I have had conversations around the benefits of this program, and you alluded to your personal experience as well as your professional experience. Do you mind just expanding upon why you think community court is beneficial and why, what the services would look like and how this could really help us long term with our homelessness crisis?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for that question, Vice Mayor. It is, this was a very deliberate process in the coordination of this program. One of the times what we're seeing on the streets is what this is going to fill the gap of people cycling through the justice system without getting services in that process of being accountable. I mentioned that in my presentation, like this isn't about taking away accountability. It's about adding additional accountability, just as David said. It adds additional resources and requirements for an individual to hopefully see a different path in a different way. A lot of people cycle through the Maricopa County jail system. When I was at the county, a large number of people, a disproportionate amount of people, report currently being homeless. There is a small treatment program within the county jail, but it by no means touches the amount of people that cycle through that justice system. This program will get the people engaged while they're in that process of being accountable. Again, this does not remove accountability. This is just to help stop the cycle that continually repeats when people have given up hope. They don't see a pathway out. And this will help achieve that goal with this program.
Can you elaborate on that cycle a bit? Because I think that's a really, really important point that you just mentioned, that, if someone is just to go to jail or go to prison, how it's this endless cycle of poverty and how, elaborate on what that world looks like and what a world with community courts could look like.
Yeah, I made a little comment in my presentation. When you have nothing, you're not afraid of losing everything. And that takes into account people when they get a citation and they have to follow up with court. Why come back to court? What incentive do they have to do to follow through with that just to go back to the street when they don't have a pathway of employment or getting the proper mental health services or the connection or family members in their life to help support them through that process? So, again, getting people engaged stops that cycle, because a lot of time people continually repeat misdemeanor offenses that could possibly be eligible for this. And again, repeating, this doesn't take away accountability. This adds additional things. When we come up with a service plan for somebody and they agree to take these certain steps, now there's an additional layer of accountability on top of the court requirements. They have the follow-up with the court appointments and that whole process, while they also have those additional requirements that they agreed to with us. right? That's, as David mentioned, that's why the Veterans Court is so successful. You know, when I have something to get up for in the morning, such as my job and something I appreciate in life and people around me supporting me, I stand up, I get in the shower, I get my clothes on each day and move forward, even when I don't want to. I think everybody in this room's had days where they just didn't want to get up and move forward, but they had things they were accountable to and needed to move forward and had goals and they had a vision for what they were doing. A lot of our folks that are out there suffering on the streets have given up on hope. They've given up on society, they've given up on themselves. And this collective up here is very empowering. As you mentioned, you know my story. And I won't share that up here in front of everybody, but I get a little emotional. But I'm standing between pretty prominent people within the city of Phoenix that don't look at me any differently. I have a past. I've come out of that past, and I've worked hard to come through that, but I didn't come through that alone. It took a village of people to support me when I just wanted to give up and crawl into a hole. And a lot of our people feel that way. So I'm very encouraged about this opportunity for people to help support them while they're walking that path of being accountable for that stuff, but also starting to give a little bit of hope in a little bit of different direction to help them stand a little bit taller in life.
Thank you, Scott. I really, really appreciate you sharing that. And I want to commend all of you, and I specifically want to commend two specific pieces of this community court program. First, I think the opportunity of entering a Phoenix community court after an individual has already been booked into jail is a great aspect in our efforts to rely less on incarceration to fix our problems. I'm really glad that we are considering a second chance for individuals, and as you mentioned, Scott, additional accountability for individuals who may not be in the space to consider this option when arrested. And second, I really also appreciate the customized service plan step, and especially the piece that says, one of those steps could be an individual adhering to securing stable housing. I think we've seen that wraparound support at our shelter, whether it's the Washington Street shelter or some of the other new ones that we have, has been very effective. So wraparound support at community courts is also, will no doubt help overall our efforts to help people who have been down on their luck and maybe need a chance to correct their mistakes. So I really appreciate this. I think this is a much needed program, and I encourage us to continue to be compassionate and humane in our approach, and just remember the overall context that first of all, this is not just a Phoenix problem. We need to remind ourselves that every day. Nationally, we have a significant housing crisis and a significant mental health crisis, compounded by many other issues. And so jail and incarceration is not the solution, and I think this is a great program. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just want to confirm, how many days per week will this court be available once it's up and running?
The current plan, Madam Chair, members, the current plan is that it will be 2 days a week.
2 days per week, okay. And that was supported by the staffing you requested in this proposal?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. And then it's my understanding that the Arizona Supreme Court has to approve courts that offer alternative solutions like this. Where have we gotten that approval, or where are we at in that approval process?
Madam Chair, members, there is no approval process like that.
Okay.
The mental health courts do adhere to a set of standards that the Arizona Supreme Court has adopted, and so there's a fair number of metrics that we keep and report to them on how the mental health court operates, or our behavioral health court. But for other specialty courts, there is nothing similar.
There's no other additional approval required. So once this gets through City Council, once City Council approves it, we would be good to go on moving forward and starting up in January.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Wonderful. And so I've had the opportunity to attend the 3 specialty courts that we have here in Phoenix over the last month, and was blessed to see graduations at all 3 of them, and hear interesting personal stories, including the mom, I believe, of 4 children who had been arrested and jailed for drug use because that is what she turned to because of a domestic violence situation. And it was, I'm going to try to get through this without crying. It was really powerful to listen to her say that going to jail is what saved her life and is going to allow her, and this program, because it got her into this program. She was thankful for the officers who arrested her. She was thankful for the system, and thankful to be able to graduate from that program so that she could return to being the mom her kids deserved and to get out of the situation she was in. That was just one. There was also a couple of veteran court graduations that were really powerful to hear, and not just hear what they say, but to hear the folks who helped them develop their plans and get to the point where they were graduating. And the truth is, every judge said that, they earned it. It's like the coin that David referred to. They did the work that they needed to do to get there. And what is important to me in this program is that it is individualized, that people will be screened. They will not get a free pass. Anybody who knows me knows that I believe in accountability and consequences can be good or bad. But the truth is that there are, in 2016, when I did some work with the Department of Corrections, it was beyond frustrating to find out that we had people coming out of our prison system who were still addicted to drugs, who didn't have a driver's license, who didn't have a social security card, and then to have the director at that time tell me that he couldn't make people get an ID card. That is ludicrous. When you're in prison, you were told when to eat and when to go to the bathroom and when to sleep. So it is important to me that this court offers folks the opportunity to do the work, to get back on their feet, and to become productive members of society and help improve not just their quality of life, but the quality of life for our entire city. So I am very thankful for all the work that you all have done to get us to this point, and the work that my staff did in researching. So I look forward to supporting this. We do have a virtual speaker. I'm not going to forget, hopefully, any more speakers today. So if we have Jeff Spellman with us. Jeff.
Good morning, Councilwoman O'Brien. Jeff Spellman with the Violence Impact Project Coalition. I just want to thank you incredibly for the work that you've done, your leadership in getting us to this point. I had the privilege of serving on the city's homeless task force along with several other neighborhood leaders. And we had been researching this idea, this concept, what we had been calling the Mesa model for many years. We know that that model in Mesa is proven to work. There's a lot of success in it. And many of us had been advocating for Phoenix to adopt this same kind of a model that you now call the community court. I want to thank Gina Montez, Judge, David Ward, Scott Hall, all of the city staff that have worked so hard to get to this point, to put this in motion. I think this is a very good thing. I think the judge talked about many of the cases involving trespassing. I can tell you as a neighborhood leader, that's one of the crimes that affect the quality of life of neighborhoods. People trespassing, and when the police make arrests for trespassing, it almost always coincides with drug offenses, drug use, drug dealing. And so these are the things that impact our communities. It creates the cycle of crime where people are just coming right back out on the street and nothing's done. Yet that visit to jail for a day really does nothing to change the situation. So this model we know will work. Really pleased that our council is considering this and moving this forward, and looking forward to the success of the community court. So with that, certainly support this effort and appreciate all of your work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jeff. Do we have any other speakers in this comment item? Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I'll second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Oh. Is that an aye, Councilman Waring?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for all your work. Item number 4 is our animal ordinance update. For that item, we will be hearing from Assistant City Manager Lori Bays and our IT Supervisor Brett Myers.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. While Brett's getting situated, I will just begin on this item. We're here to discuss some proposed updates to the animal cruelty ordinance today. The recommendations today are the culmination of the work of multiple partners, including council offices, multiple city departments, as well as community animal welfare organizations. I want to thank everyone for their partnership on this. So today we will discuss updates to a few things: the definition of animal versus livestock, the definition of adequate shelter, and the requirements for proper restraint or tethering of a dog. Additionally, we will discuss internal enhancements to the hearing process that occurs after an animal seizure, as well as a new My Phoenix 311 feature that will be helpful in this process, as well as an upcoming educational campaign. So to start off with, the first change is fairly simple. It just distinguishes between the definition of animal as it is related to the animal cruelty part of the ordinance and the definition of livestock, which is defined in a separate section of the animal ordinance. The second change recommended is to the definition of shelter. So in the current ordinance, the reference to shelter is not on its own. It's defined under the definition of cruel neglect and only specifies that shelter must be suitable for weather conditions. So what we're proposing is to create a definition of adequate shelter. And I know this is a very wordy slide, but I wanted to give you the exact language that is going to be proposed in the ordinance. It is a very specific definition that sets out requirements for what adequate shelter means. It can be natural or artificial shelter, but it must be accessible throughout the year, structurally sound, maintained in good repair to protect the animal from injury. It has to be of sufficient size to permit the animal to enter, stand, turn around, and lie down in a natural manner, and it must protect the animal from extreme weather conditions, have adequate ventilation and drainage, and shall be maintained in a manner which minimizes the risk of disease. The third change that we're proposing is regarding the portion of the ordinance related to unlawful restraint of a dog. There are several changes proposed in this section. The first one is shown on this slide, and it removes chain as an option for tethering and still allows the use of ropes, leashes, or cables for tethering. And I do want to point out one change in the language here that's slightly different from what's in the file. So the proposed language indicates that a restraint means a rope, tether, leash, cable, or device other than a chain, and that's the change, that attaches a dog to a stationary object or trolley system. So again, it removes chain as an option for tethering. The next change in this section is to prohibit the use of choke or pinch collars for tethering. And there is also a clarification in this section to make it clear that if you are going to tether your dog, you must ensure that there is access to food, water, shade, dry ground, and adequate shelter as just defined at all times. I also want to note that the language regarding tethering during extreme weather conditions was not included in the packet, but is included here on the slide, and this is the language that's being proposed, is to continue, and this is existing language, continue to prohibit tethering during extreme weather conditions. And extreme weather conditions is also defined in the ordinance. And I want to emphasize something. Tethering is not allowed at all during extreme weather conditions. However, the requirement for adequate shelter as defined in the proposed language would still apply. So if a dog is not brought indoors during extreme weather, they must be provided adequate shelter outdoors. It should also be noted that the changes in the ordinance regarding tethering are not intended to promote tethering. In fact, Tethering is not the preferred or ideal method of restraint for a dog. However, the city does recognize that there are pet owners that still choose to tether their dogs and may not have other options. Therefore, we want to provide requirements that make tethering as safe as possible, and we also want to provide resources to our residents if they want to learn about alternatives to tethering. In some cases, when there are animal cruelty complaints, there is a seizure of an animal. When that occurs, a post-seizure hearing is required within 48 hours of the request to the court after an officer has seized the animal. One of the things that we've done internally, there are no changes proposed to the ordinance, but internally we have ensured that officers or the on-duty chain of command will now be contacted by phone and email when the hearing is scheduled to ensure that officers don't miss those court dates. We have issued an employee notification with a reminder of the ordinance and the 48-hour time frame, and also advised officers to be prepared to attend those hearings. So we hope that that will help make the process go smoothly. And now I want to turn it over to Brett Myers from our Information Technology Department, who will discuss the new My Phoenix 311 feature that will assist with this effort.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Both police and neighborhood service departments engaged our web application services group within Information Technology Department. We are leveraging our existing technologies to create a new form on the My Phoenix 311 services page. The new form will provide an additional avenue for concerned citizens to submit concerns in areas such as barking dogs, tethering unlicensed dogs, hoarding, and disturbing the peace. The form directs residents to contact either 911 or the non-emergency line for items such as physical injury inflicted to an animal and killing or attempting to kill an animal. Upon submission of a concern, the technology will ingest the concern into a data system, pass off pertinent details to neighborhood services so that NSD systems can generate educational letters specific to the submitted concerns. The letter references the associated city codes, a link to the full associated city ordinance, and contact details to the Property Crimes Bureau, as well as their partner agencies, Arizona Humane Society and Maricopa County Animal Care and Control. The letters will be printed and mailed the following business day upon submission of the concern. If a second concern is reported at the address, the submission details are routed to the Police Crimes Bureau, as well as the partner agencies as appropriate.
Thank you, Brett. I also want to make you aware of some educational efforts that we will be embarking on, some of which is in partnership with the Arizona Humane Society. As I mentioned, we always want to provide resources to our residents and make them aware of the requirements of the ordinance, as well as best practices for the care and treatment of their animals. The ad you see on the screen is an example of the types of materials we will be assisting with sharing with the community. I also want to emphasize that the intent regarding the enforcement of the ordinance is to lead with education and provide pet owners information about resources to assist them in properly caring for their animals. And there are some great organizations out there who will provide additional resources if folks need them. So our recommendation is to request the Public Safety and Justice Subcommittee's recommendation to the full City Council to amend the city's animal ordinance to include the following updates: the definitions of animal and adequate shelter, as well as the clarifications that I went over regarding tethering, which is in the unlawful restraint of a dog section. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We have 3 members of the public here to speak on this item, so I think we'll start with public comment first. We have, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, I'm trying really hard, Christy Margario, and then after that, Don Bentley.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Christy Margario. I'm speaking on behalf of a group of concerned Phoenix citizens who have been actively working to improve animal welfare within the city of Phoenix. Our group has reviewed the material included in the agenda packet and are grateful for the opportunity to provide additional information to the subcommittee before any action is taken. First, we appreciate the city's intention to modernize, strengthen, and clarify the ordinance language. I hope we can all agree any proposed changes to the animal ordinances should reduce subjectivity and improve enforceability. Second, we want to thank the city for adding back the language into the unlawful restraint of a dog ordinance to now read, quote, "An owner shall not restrain a dog outside by use of a choke collar, pinch collar, use of a restraint that unreasonably limits the dog's movements, or during extreme weather conditions." To be clear, we strongly oppose any ordinance that legalizes tethering, as it has been well documented that tethering is fundamentally cruel confinement. But adding this language regarding extreme weather conditions back into the ordinance is a step in the right direction. Lastly, we strongly encourage the subcommittee to move forward with utilization of the Phoenix 311 form within the website to allow the public to report suspected animal abuse and neglect incidents, with the addition of one inclusion. All organizations responsible for receiving animal abuse and neglect complaints, including third-party contractors working on behalf of the city, must be required to enter complaint data into the form. The PAWS team would like to personally thank Councilwoman Ansari and staff for their time and support. Thank you all for your attention and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. We have Don Bentley next, followed by MJ Simpson.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, my name is Don Bentley. In 2016, Phoenix City Council passed your current tethering ordinance, which includes two circumstances in which tethering is banned. Number one, when it unreasonably limits the dog's movement, and number two, during extreme weather conditions, which are clearly defined. I'm greatly appreciative that you will not be removing the second circumstance regarding extreme weather conditions. We need more restrictions on dog tethering, not less. There's only one other issue I would like to mention. The agenda states a concern that tethering bans may result in an increase in loose animals. The cities of Glendale and Tucson and Pima County all have complete, no-exception bans on dog tethering that have been in place for years and are working great. That's what Phoenix should be doing. But concerning the loose dog issue, I spoke with Glendale officials about it and was told, quote, "There was not a noticed increase in dog-at-large calls after we enacted our ordinance." They also stated, "The number of tethering complaints in Glendale has been significantly minimal, indicating a commendable level of compliance among the community," end quote. And that's with a total ban. So we have real-world experience right next door saying that tethering restrictions don't increase loose dog problems. So in closing, thank you for leaving the tethering ordinance intact and for your planned education campaign. I really like the involvement of neighborhood services. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And our next speaker is MJ Simpson.
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. My name is MJ Simpson. I'm an animal welfare advocate based in Phoenix. By way of background, I began volunteering at the Maricopa County Animal Care and Control Shelter 4 years ago and quickly saw the gross and almost incomprehensible pet overpopulation in Maricopa County and primarily in Phoenix, where I also live and work. As part of volunteering, I began walking the neighborhoods where many of the dogs come from in Phoenix who end up at the county shelter. I, with One Love Rescue and fellow advocates here today with Poverty's Pets, help animals there and the people who own them, offering free spay and neuter clinics, vaccinations, and supplies, including fencing and containment options. This is where I encountered tethered dogs and on tie-outs. In no uncertain terms, this is animal cruelty. These dogs suffer from fluctuation in temperatures, aggravation from people and other animals passing by, attacks, and then they can also strangle themselves. You don't have to take my word for it. You can see a report from the CDC, from the Arizona Humane Society with their Break the Chain campaign, and the U.S. Humane Society, as well as the New Mexico Department of Public Safety, who did a comprehensive study on tethered dogs. Tethered dogs are dangerous dogs. So while I appreciate the efforts that were made with Councilwoman Ansari and Councilwoman Pastor and Assistant City Manager Bays to do these this improved language in the ordinance, to be clear, I am against tethering, and I think any animal welfare expert would be as well. But today, with the improvements to this ordinance, I think it's a great step forward for the city of Phoenix. Hopefully the city of Phoenix can continue and again move towards what the city of Glendale has done for years and Pima County and Tucson have also done for years. I spoke with an officer in animal control in Tucson. She says that loose dogs are not an issue. People understand through education that tethering their dogs is illegal, and there's significant compliance. So thank you very much for your time and consideration today.
Thank you for your comments. Committee members, comments? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Chairwoman. First of all, I just wanted to start by thanking Lori Bays, David Benton, and our police department who have worked exceptionally hard on this ordinance update, and to advocacy groups like Poverty Pets, One Love Pitbull Foundation, Incredible Stella, and others who have met with us time and time again to push for these changes. Our furry residents deserve much better living conditions than they often find themselves in. And then I just want a couple of questions for Lori, and I may have to ask some clarification of those who spoke, but advocates have asked that tethering not be allowed at all during extreme weather conditions. Can you explain why this was not included in this update and what the previous language allowed or did not allow in regard to this?
So, Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, members of the subcommittee, we are actually maintaining the current language, which that's the change that I discussed, that does not allow tethering at all during extreme weather conditions. And it also provides some additional parameters outside of those times when there are extreme weather conditions and a dog is tethered that have to be complied with in order to be in compliance with the ordinance.
Got it. And then, and I think just to repeat so it's on the record, you mentioned forms of adequate shelter that may qualify them to remain under compliance if the animal is not tethered. Can you walk us through what adequate shelter looks like?
Yeah, so the requirements for adequate shelter are pretty specific. So the shelter can be either artificial or natural. It must be accessible throughout the year. It must be structurally sound, maintained in good repair so that the animal is not injured. It has to be of sufficient size to permit the animal to enter, stand, turn around, and lie down in a natural manner. And it also must protect the animal from extreme weather conditions, have adequate ventilation and drainage, and shall be maintained in a manner which minimizes the risk of disease, infestation, or parasites.
Okay, thank you. And Brett, thank you so much for the update on the My Phoenix 311 app. As you know, my office has been working with Neighborhood Services and PD on this edition. I'm not sure if either of you two, I was a little unclear on the request, the additional request of what was needed for My Phoenix 311, but perhaps we can make sure that connection is made and go through any additions that I don't know if you caught it or can elaborate a little bit.
I did catch that and made note of it.
Okay.
That it is something that if it makes sense to do, and we can make it happen technologically.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Again, really appreciate it. I think the education piece of this is incredibly important. Any improvement we can make on that front will help immensely. I do want to make sure that any action that we take does not place any undue burden on low-income communities, and we don't especially want to place any undue financial burden on any of our residents. That being said, I also think we can do more to make sure animals aren't suffering on our watch. So agree with some of the public commenters. I think this update is a step in the right direction. I hope we can work towards robust education focus, which will hopefully open the door to an outright tethering ban down the line. But thank you so much for your work on this. Appreciate it, and looking forward to moving this to council.
Councilman Waring?
I'm good, thank you.
Wonderful. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you to everybody for all your work on that item. Our agenda item number 5 is Park Ranger and Security Services update. For this item, we will hear from Parks Director Cynthia Aguilar and our Deputy Director Jared Rogers.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We are here today to provide you with an update on our park ranger program and the hiring of our third shift park rangers, as well as our security services program. With me today is Deputy Director Jared Rogers. He will start the first part of the presentation and then I will follow. And with that, I will turn it over to Jared.
Thank you, Cynthia, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Excited to come before you and talk about recent progress on our park ranger hiring efforts. To start, we'll just talk about briefly, we have two different types of assignments that our park rangers can primarily be assigned to. They might work in the mountain preserves or in our urban parks. Both types of assignments help to provide guest satisfaction, to make our parks safer, to help make sure they're more attractive and more usable as the rangers go around and help enforce city codes and code of conduct. The mountain preserve rangers are assigned to primarily these three areas. In the north parts of the city, they'd be in the Sonoran Preserve or Deem Hills at North Mountain Park. The east area rangers include Camelback Mountain, Dreamy Drop, Pastoa Peak, and Papago Park. The south zone primarily consists of South Mountain Park and the Rio Salado Habitat Restoration Area. The mountain preserve, those assigned to the mountain preserve parks, primarily focus on making sure animal habitat is looked after, that hiking trails are in good shape, that trailheads and restrooms are clean and accessible. They also educate the public, like our urban rangers do, on code of conduct and park rules, make sure that people visiting the preserves are as safe as possible. They also offer programming. Our park rangers assigned to preserves also assist when there's emergency situations, which unfortunately happen a little bit more often than we'd like. They help search for lost or injured hikers. They close trailheads as needed. They communicate with park users and assist first responders during rescues. Currently, we have 69 park rangers that would have this mountain preserve assignment, and we have currently total 8 vacancies. Switching over to our rangers that are assigned to our urban parks, they have over 186 parks that they help patrol over the entire length and width of the city. They also help patrol some of the pedestrian paths and tunnels that people enjoy in the city. They, like the rangers assigned to the preserves, help educate the public about park rules and city ordinances, including the code of conduct. Currently, we have 28 park rangers on the urban team with 5 vacancies. Recently, City Council approved moving forward with the third shift, and we've been hard at work. I wanted to particularly applaud the efforts of our Human Resources Department. They've been a great help in making sure that we meet timelines that we've been trying to do to get this program up and running as quick as possible. The ranger job was posted on May 5th. It was open until May 21st. We made sure that it was advertised on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other avenues. We had 100 applicants apply. On June 1st, we had a large hiring event with multiple 6 interview panels going at the same time to get as many candidates processed as we could. Just yesterday, I'll just update, it's not on the PowerPoint here, but we had an event where we had our human resources staff out as well at the South Mountain Environmental Education Center, helping to begin some of the early onboarding efforts for all of the candidates for the third shift. July 10th through 14th July 10th is the day that the new third shift will actually be city employees officially. Ranger Academy, which is an intensive 2-week classroom setting with some field work, will happen July 17th to July 28th. Field training would begin July 31st. The last 2 weeks of that field training will actually be intended to be during the third shift, so they'll actually be working overnight. The earlier parts of that field training will be working with current rangers on their day and morning shifts. So the target right now is September 11 to have their third shift fully operational. With that, I will turn it back over to Cynthia.
Thank you, Jared. And Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, now that we know the timing and the status of the onboarding of the third shift rangers, which we are extremely pleased with, as Jared mentioned, we wanted to also talk a little bit about the status of security services and what that looks like when we will essentially have both third shift park rangers and overnight security services. And so just as a reminder, the 12 park locations on this slide are the parks that currently have overnight security services. These parks were primarily selected based on the number of park ranger visits, number of trespass notices issued, and then the number and types of citations also issued at these park locations. Those services began back on February 8th. Patrols are currently taking place from 8 p.m. to 10 a.m., 7 days a week in these park locations. And the security services to continue to provide the original scope of work, which is conducting foot patrols of the park. So they drive to each park location, they work together in pairs, and they get out and actually patrol the park property, facilities. If they run into individuals in the park outside of park hours or even during park hours, they'll educate them on the code of conduct. For those that they encounter outside of park hours, we hope that educating them about the park hours will help them know that they're not supposed to be in the park outside of those hours. They also inspect park amenities. They check restrooms and gates where applicable. They submit daily reports that several of our team members go through on a regular basis. And then also via the park staff, they're relaying information that goes essentially to us and then to the Office of Homeless Solutions when needed. They also contact park rangers and Phoenix Police for emergencies as needed as well. Initial outcomes of the services, again, they're taking the opportunity to educate as many people on the code of conduct as possible. We are seeing decrease in incidents of vandalism in many of these locations. Any vandalism is being reported and addressed immediately, so through their daily reporting, we're able to look at that information in the morning, find out where that vandalism took place, and more quickly address it. We're also experiencing a decrease in trash and debris. And generally, people have been responsive to our security personnel. And this data that I'm going to share essentially is from back when the services started in February through May 31st. They've engaged with 793 people. So out of those 793 engagements, they've asked for park ranger assistance at least one time. They've sought assistance 22 times through the Phoenix Police Department, again out of those 793 engagements, and they've requested emergency services 5 times, with a majority of those incidents being outside of park hours and finding individuals that may have been unconscious or looked to be not well, and they called 911, and many of those were related to drug incidents. In terms of next steps, again, as Jared mentioned, the third shift park rangers are scheduled to begin actually patrolling during the overnight hours the week of September 11th. And so once that happens, September 11th, that will begin when the overlap of security services and third shift rangers are taking place. Security services will continue through November 30th. That's the conclusion of the existing citywide security contract. And the intent there is to make sure that we have some time to evaluate, some transition time as the third shift park rangers are being onboarded and just getting started with those similar duties, but also some time to evaluate the effectiveness or the need of having both security and park rangers overnight. Currently, the Finance Department is preparing to issue a new solicitation for the citywide services contract, and we are working very closely with them to ensure that there's language that includes what we would need. We use security services beyond these 12 park locations. We use them for special events. We use them for golf course events and needs. And so, again, Parks historically has used security services in one way or another. And that new contract essentially would start and be effective on December 1st. And so should we be directed to continue services beyond November 30th, we would want to make sure that we have enough time to have a plan in place to either continue utilizing the existing vendor or to identify a new vendor. And that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, members?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Waring.
Thank you. Hey, Cynthia, I think the last time you presented on this, you said I think you explicitly said there were 3 ODs. Am I to interpret what you just said is that there now have been 5 ODs?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, and Councilman Waring, that's correct.
Okay. So again, in my comments, I 100% stand by on that previous item. But this was a controversial, barely passed the council program. But you're basically telling me 5 people's lives were potentially saved because we implemented this a few months ago. It's not in every park. They're not covering every hour. So who knows how many ODs are going unnoticed because we don't have people in every park. We don't have people there every single hour of every single day. We're not doing anybody any favors by scaling things back, by turning a blind eye to people going to the bathroom outside City Hall, which is exactly what we're doing. And we weren't doing anybody any favors by letting anarchy reign in our parks at night. So I appreciate what you're doing on this. This was absolutely 100% one of the best programs we could have possibly implemented, and we should be doing more of it. The numbers are irrefutable. It's saving taxpayers money because there's less vandalism and garbage, and just making life more livable for the people who, frankly, deserve a lot of compassion and empathy too. The people who are funding all this want to use the city amenities and don't want their kids to step on a dirty needle when they try to do the right thing and take them to the park to get some exercise and fresh air. So I appreciate the fact that we're doing this, and I hope we do more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. Wonderful. We really appreciate all the work, especially appreciate the hard work that you put into ensuring that we would have transition services. I'm thrilled that we're able to get our third shift openings, I shouldn't say vacancies, openings filled and those folks trained and part of our Parks Department. Again, kudos to you all. Great job, and I'm thrilled to support this and continue to have additional park security to support our park rangers and our officers, because I think it is doing exactly what we need it to do, which is make our parks safe for all those who want to use it in the proper way. So thank you for being with us today. Our next item is going to be item number 7, our UAS or drone update. And for that item, we will hear from Executive Assistant Fire Chief Scott Walker, Commander Brian Riggin, and Parks Deputy Director Jared Rogers, who will remain with us. Thank you for being with us all this morning.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So I'm Scott Walker, Executive Assistant Fire Chief. Joining me today is Commander Brian Regan of the Phoenix Police Department and Deputy Director Jared Rogers of the Phoenix Park and Recreation Department. We're here today to provide the subcommittee with an overview and update on the Fire, Police, and Parks Department's UAS programs. So starting with the Fire Department, as a reminder, the Fire Department did have the first approved and sanctioned UAS program for the City of Phoenix, something we're very proud of, and I can tell you we've been very busy over the last year building out our program. Topics that I want to cover will be our training efforts, our missions, the positive impacts we've had, the outreach and collaboration we've done, and the future state of our program. Our training program, as we committed to you a year ago, has been very robust. So it's a 40-hour program that all pilots must go through and accomplish and achieve before they can become a certified pilot for us. We created a training task book. This captures the skills, the knowledge that is necessary to be a pilot. They have to prove and demonstrate those skills and be signed off before they can move forward. We train and teach our folks on the standard operating procedures, both of the Fire Department and the City of Phoenix. We have a NIST course, a National Institute of Science and Technology course, that is very specific and really captures and demonstrates the skills of maneuvering a drone through this very complicated course. So when they complete that, we know they can fly a drone anywhere in the City of Phoenix. We also have platform familiarization in our program. This is important because we might have pilots or somebody that's flown a drone somewhere else, but we want to make sure they understand how our drones in the Fire Department operate and how we want them utilized. So we want to make sure they're comfortable with what we have. Search and rescue techniques, again, very important. For instance, if we had a lost hiker on South Mountain, that's a very large area, so we can teach our folks how to use a wide area search pattern, a grid pattern, and try to identify or locate that person and really avoid having to send up our rescuers from all sides of the mountain. 3D mapping is another skill we're teaching. Again, this is important as we look at our outside combustible program, certainly a concern of the mayor and council, our mulch industry, our recyclers. We want to make sure they stay in compliance. We can go out and measure the size of piles, the length, width, height, the access roads and routes into them to make sure they're in compliance. So it's been a very good tool for that as well. And then in addition to the 40 hours that everyone must go through, we have monthly continuing education. This is important because the U.S. technology is advancing and changing almost daily, so we want to make sure that our pilots are up to date on our own policies, procedures, but also the technology itself. And so I can tell you we're very proud. We now have, we'll be finishing up with 13 or have 13 FAA certified pilots within the Phoenix Fire Department. This is a number we're comfortable with right now where our program is. As we expand our program and need more pilots, they'll go through the same rigorous training and meet those standards before they'll be allowed to fly a drone. So next, if you remember a year ago, we were here in front of you because this is our anniversary in June of 2023. We were talking to you a year ago and really looking in theory how a UAV program could benefit us. Well, today we can look back and we can give you objective examples of how it has benefited us. So we have used and are using the UAV program on mountain rescues and has proven beneficial. And I'll get to some slides that really demonstrate that in just a minute for you. We've used on confined space rescues. So these could be trench rescues, borehole rescues, which we have one we'll show you. Structure fires, it's very important, especially on anywhere from a standard house fire, or we call it more of a routine incident, to get a full 360-degree view, but also on some of these larger structures, some of these large warehouses we're seeing, 400,000 or 500,000 square foot structures. Really important to get a full view of those structures. Brush fires, we're in brush season. We've already used the UAV in our brush fires we've had this year, and it has proven extremely valuable and beneficial. We're utilizing our UAVs in our investigation section as well. For instance, we may have a building that has had a collapse. We can't put our folks in there because of the risk. We can use the UAV to go overhead and capture information to try to determine, was this an arson or an accidental type fire? So it's adding that layer that we just did not have before. And then even in our public affairs section, we're able to capture footage and utilize this to push out through our social media to demonstrate what the fire department is doing and how we're serving the community. And it really is a welcome information to our community. They like to see it, and they like to see tangible things, and the UAV really gives us a perspective we didn't have before. So in total, in our operations section, we've actually, and these numbers have actually grown because this slide was put together a few days ago. We've still been busy over the last few days, but more than 728 flights we've flown in the past year. We have more than 111 flight hours. This is training and operational flights, and then more than 100 incidents that we have responded to with the UAV that have provided direct benefit to our operations section and to our residents here in Phoenix. So you can see we've been very busy. And I will note every picture you see in here has been taken from our UAV and our incidents, mostly in Phoenix, a couple outside of Phoenix, but all incidents we responded to. The next, what I want to do is show you really the benefits so you can see what we see and how it's helped the city of Phoenix. So these are two pictures that are from our UAV, as I said. The picture on the left is the front of a house that you might see anywhere across Phoenix. So the perspective here is an incident commander sitting on the street, the front of the house. Really doesn't even look like it had a fire there. There's no smoke from those windows. But the picture on the right is the back of this house. This is where the fire occurred. So you can see we had a significant fire, significant damage to the structure, significant number of structures within that fire footprint. We had structures both on both sides, east and west of this fire. This is important because this really is important information the incident commander needs to make decisions where we're going to place resources, are resources in a safe location, are we having an impact on that fire that we want to have. And so you can see this perspective we simply would not have had before just from having the UAV overhead. Next are some videos that really demonstrate, I think. So to set this one up, this is the same picture. This is the top picture is infrared, and the bottom view is in normal view. So as we play this video, you can see on the bottom a lot of smoke. Incident commander really can't see with the UAV what's going on. But if you look at the top picture, now you see firefighters working through and walking through that smoke, working hard at work there. And you'll see a company officer in the middle upper part of this picture. They're looking where hot spots are. They're going to direct their firefighter with a hose line to this location. You're going to see them spray water. The dark is cool area. You see them pointing to where to spray water, what to do. You're going to see them apply that water here in just a second. You see that. That area now is cooled off. That fire is put out. Incident commander has this information in real time, so they can make real-time decisions with this type of information they're getting. So again, very direct impact to what we do and saving resources on the ground. Next, here is a large 500,000 square foot warehouse in Vice Mayor Ansari's district. We had a fire in the roof structure, actually in the solar panels on this, And as we pan to the left, you can get some sense of the scale as you see the firefighters in the top of the picture. They almost look like ants walking on this roof. And these solar panels are the black in the middle. You can see the damage coming into view here. This is where the fire was. You see the firefighters now at the top of the screen. Normally, we would not have this view. So our incident commander would be blind, if you would, trying to manage a 500,000 square foot structure, members up on the roof, at risk, potentially at risk, without any information. So you can see this perspective alone, what it adds to our ability. And again, these buildings can be dangerous as cold smoke type structures. Smoke can migrate down into the structure. Historically, we had to send firefighters into the building to try to find the fire. With UAV, we can find the fire on the roof even that much quicker and get people to that fire. Next is a confined space rescue. This is probably our most dangerous rescue we perform or incident we perform. So in this situation, there was a large pile of dirt, so it would have completely obstructed the incident commander's view of this operation. So we're at the end of this, so we have our technical rescue folks actually extricating this person out of a 100-foot borehole. There was no way to shore this up. This is high risk. The incident commander could watch this the whole time, make sure our folks are operating safely, all the right techniques are being used, bring this person up. Really, at this point, they're out, they're safe, and our rescues are safe. Again, perspective we just would not have had in the past. And then just finishing up a couple of more demonstrations. This is up in Councilman Waring's district. This is a brush fire incident. This one I wanted to point out because you can see the fire. So to the left, that area, you see some debris there. That's actually a homeless encampment that we did not know was there. You can see the wind pushing that fire, potentially pushing in that. Without this information, we would not have known we had a life safety risk, something we generally don't have in a brush fire. This is something we gained by the U.S., and we actually had multiple encampments. We are now working with our other city departments to try to help and assist those individuals living in here. But on the fire ground, we were able to find that out with the U.S. overhead. And then just one last video. Again, same brush fire. You can see, we could see where the fire was going, obviously threatening the freeway. We worked with DPS to shut the freeway down. In the middle of the picture, you see a pole. That's a power pole. So we can work with utility companies to address that. And why this is important is this gives that incident commander information on where they're going to assign resources, who they need to be calling to the scene, and it allows us to react much faster than we normally would. So I believe, and hopefully you see the value added and from an operational perspective, but we wanted to try to quantify really what, from a financial perspective, what is the U.S. providing to our residents, to the city of Phoenix. So the same brush fire I just showed you pictures of. So on this, I talked personally to the incident commander. They told me they would have had to call a second alarm assignment had they not had the footage from the UAV. So what that means is they would have had 4 more engine companies, 4 more brush trucks, 2 more battalion chiefs respond to that scene and have to stage and be as a resource ready. So compare that at a cost of $2,568.34 per hour. We had drone 1 on scene. That's a 2-person unit. Cost of that is $193.10 per hour. So the UAV program, from a fiscal perspective, saved the city and our taxpayers, our residents, $2,375.24 per hour because of the value added to it. So from a safety perspective, from an operational perspective, and a fiscal perspective, the UAV program is successful.
And Chief Walker, I'm going to interrupt. I apologize, but I appreciate this cost savings immensely. But more importantly, I appreciate that you are showing that we left 4 engine companies and 4 brush trucks in service to other parts of our city. So that is just huge because it means we're able to respond to calls, right?
Madam Chair, thank you for pointing that out. That is 100% correct. By not having to send those units to that incident and stage, and maybe it may or may not have been needed, but the potential we had to have them there, they remained in service and responding to other emergencies that are occurring regularly within their first dues. That means the response times were improved. That means service delivery to our community was improved from that perspective, yes.
And this does have a ripple effect because of our mutual aid agreement. Depending on where we are in the city, you could have to call in other fire stations from our neighboring cities like Glendale or Peoria or Scottsdale. So it really isn't just impacting Phoenix, it impacts the whole metro area.
Madam Chair, again, correct, and this fire was around the 101 and 51, so this certainly could have and would have impacted Scottsdale, for instance, an automatic gate partner, because we're in the northeast part of Phoenix. All of our resources, or many of our resources, would have been sent to this incident. So correct again, this has it has that ripple effect as we've talked about on response times, on service delivery, starting with Phoenix and moving outwards.
Wonderful. Thank you for indulging my comments.
Thank you. Just a couple more slides I have here. So our outreach and collaboration efforts do continue. Our program continues to receive national attention, something I'm very proud of, and our folks behind me are the ones that really have built this program and deserve the credit. But people are reaching out, and even though our program is only a year old, we are being told we are leading. We are doing things others aren't. So we're on that early adopter and even maybe a little the bleeding edge that sometimes we question we want to be there, but I'd say we are there pushing the boundaries of what we're doing in our program because we're thinking very innovative, very holistic. So we're very proud of that. Continue to get opportunities to speak at conferences, webinars our folks do. We're also part of the Valley-wide, which now is statewide, UAS group, police and fire departments across our region and our state, working together to really learn from each other and how to better utilize the UAS programs to serve their communities. So we'll continue those efforts. And then finally, for the fire department part is what's the future look like? So with the budget that's moving forward in next year's budget, we do have a deployment vehicle for our U.S. program, and it's a Sprinter-type van. Our goal is to have monitors in there, have the UAVs in there so they can arrive quickly and deploy quickly and start getting that type of information to our incident commander. We want to increase our response coverage. We have a large city, 520 square miles. We're looking at adding on our north and south shift command units a tethered drone to expand our program. That way they'll get there sooner. They can launch and start providing that information even sooner on more incidents. So we want to really expand that coverage and service delivery. Streaming technology is really important. We want to make sure that we're feeding that information not just to the fire chief or myself or operations chief that may not be on scene, but the vision is as a larger assignment, for instance, as units are responding, they could stream that video from the UAV to those units. That way they could better mentally prepare what they might be getting into, what kind of assignment they might have. They can prepare themselves for that before they arrive. Again, preloading that information. So we want to advance in that area. Fleet diversification, as I said, we want to add a tethered drone. This is a drone that is in a box. It actually launches with a tethered line. This is valuable because it can launch very quickly. It does not have to have a pilot, and it can continually powered, so it can stay up during the whole incident. We also want to expand. As you remember, we started on our own budget as the first program to proof of concept this. So we we only have one model of UAV. We have more than one, but only one model. We want to expand on the models. We have bigger payload, better cameras, those types of things. We're going to be looking to expand the fleet itself. And then we'll continue with our public safety partnerships, as I talked about, from the co-chair of the UAV group, working with our police department, other police departments, other fire departments, other local, state, even anyone interested national partners that want to participate or communicate with us. We're happy to assist, happy to provide, as helping with other city departments as they look to bring on their own programs. We'll happy to assist them as well. So with that does conclude my portion. I'll now turn it over to Commander Regan for the police department's portion. Commander?
Thank you. Oops, sorry. Thank you. Good morning, Brian Riggin. I represent the Homeland Defense Bureau. Again, with the background of the program, we began in February of 22 with the City Council approval. In August, we identified the UAS pilots, and then in September, the U.S. Executive Committee approved the police UAS program. And then in October, our U.S. pilots completed the AZ post-flight training, which is very similar to what Chief Walker already mentioned. We've been operational since November, so just over 6 months. Some of the things that we've realized is an increase in officer safety, decrease in time on scenes, an increase in evidence, quality of evidence collection, and then certainly a force multiplier. And allow me to provide some examples. So investigatively, we've used it for mapping of crime scenes, locating of evidence, and location of missing people. This is an example of an investigation completed by our Vehicular Crimes Unit. Traditionally, our photos are normally completed at the ground level by detectives on scene. By the use of the drone, we're able to get different perspectives of the drone unit and a higher quality of collection. During the mapping process as well, we're also able to do top-down photos. So those photos take approximately 50% less time to do with the use of the drone versus traditional methods. It increases the quality of the investigation and hopefully will increase increase also in the conviction rate associated with any crimes associated with it. Another investigation example would be, unfortunately, a couple of members of our committee lost their lives by drowning in the Salt River bed around near 19th Avenue. The drone, in consultation with our helicopter, was able to identify both of those victims in the river. Once they were identified, our drones were able to take over at that time and keep track of the victims. That allowed our helicopter to return back to service to provide other services in the city. And as we are well aware, the drone is significantly cheaper to operate than a rotor helicopter. Once they were located, it's then the job of our specialty vehicle dive team to recover those victims. And so traditionally that's done by them driving around the perimeter from a ground-based, identifying the safest location to put in the raft to perform the extraction. With the drone, they were able to cut that down significantly. Because of the flowing of the waterway, they were also identify the best location to actually put the members of the dive team in. So it'd be the quickest point to recovery, also the safest, and then keep the victims constantly under surveillance to make sure that the recovery is as safe as possible. We also use it for tactical issues, searching dangerous areas, providing overwatch on search warrants. This is an example of a person that was located in the shed here. So the nice thing about this is there's drone feed that's done. Command is using intelligence-based decision-making. Also, you can make sure that the teams are in an appropriate location and identify any hazards, which increases the safety not only for officers, but for the public as hand as well. In this particular example, had there been children playing in the yard adjacent to that, obviously we would wait contacting that subject until we can remove any innocents from the area prior to making that contact in case there would be any sort of a conflict. This is going to be an actual video. This is from the DPS officer that was shot near 19th Avenue Loop 101. This is the barricade that happened. So this drone footage is going to be the footage of the barricade that occurred in an apartment complex. So in this case, we believe that the subject was hiding inside the bathroom without exposing any officers to any harm. We're able to fly the drone inside, clear the area, and then go into the bathroom, clear both sides, and then as the footage stops right here, the subject also was hiding inside of that closet right there. The subject came out. When he came out, we could see that there were no weapons inside of his hand. We could also determine if he was going to be compliant or not, and if there are any weapons nearby. So this increases the safety to the officers, obviously on scene, increases the safety of the public, and then ultimately the safety of the suspect as well in this case, knowing that we're going to be potentially contacting somebody who does not have access to weapons or at weapons nearby. Event uses we also use for mapping and advanced planning and the event management. I think we all remember the Super Bowl that was just here. So this was Margaret T. Hance Park. So this is the map that was done of the actual venue and then all of the entrance exit locations. To the left is going to be the bridge at Central. To the right is going to be the 3rd Street. Traditionally what we've used, that's the same view of a Google map. So traditionally during our command and different maps that we put out, we'll use a Google display. But because of the drone use and the mapping software, we were able to overlay the map that we actually took on top of the Google-style map. So that helps us in several ways. We're able to use the identifiers that are actually on scene. So when that area is built out, we can use, there was a big green cactus next to the stage. So if somebody identifies a missing kid by the big green cactus, we know exactly where we're talking about. And it just provides the command and control element, real-time information, again, trying to make the best decisions possible and then make the event move as smoothly as possible. The program numbers that we've used thus far, just over 6 months, we've performed 236 tactical missions, 144 investigative, 26 events, and then 11 others similar to Chief Walker mentioned. We did parks demo, school demo, PAB video as well. As far as savings that have occurred, it's very variable, quite frankly. The savings could be very minimal, maybe $100 to several thousand dollars, depending on the size and complexity of the scene. For example, a tactical scene that recently happened had probably 30-plus officers on scene. We were able to clear a 2-story structure with a drone that took about 5 minutes, locate a suspect that was passed out inside next to a rifle. Because of that real-time intelligence that we were provided, officers were able to go up to that suspect, get him into custody without any force being used, whereas traditionally with a wheeled robot that would take significantly longer and quite frankly may not be able to have the same view because of ground-based versus air-based. So we can tell you it's a huge increase in officer safety. There is a value added at every mission that it deploys on, and some of the comments that we've received from many of the end users have been game changer. Going forward, we're continuing with the focus areas that we approved for investigations, tactical, and event management. We will continue to identify approximately 15 to 20 more pilots to add additional drones to meet the truly growing demand, especially within the patrol division. And we will continue training on mapping and RGS-related skills. Now, Jared.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here to talk a little bit about the progress that the Parks Department has been able to make towards our adoption into the drone program as well. We're one of the early adopters. We've been learning a lot of lessons from our police and fire colleagues. They've been assisting us greatly. Really appreciate that. I just wanted to start by focusing on the areas that we intend to use the drones in, and that would be our mountain preserves and desert parks to help patrol over 200 miles of trails. And we, as I'm sure we're all aware, there's more than 3.5 million hikers that use our trails every year. And these areas are spread throughout the city. Our proposed uses are to provide rescue assistance when possible with the fire department. As I mentioned, we have a lot of trails. This technology can really help us to inspect the trails to find out what kind of erosion is occurring over time. We can also monitor cultural resources. We have very real archaeological features spread throughout our system. The technology allows us to patrol those areas, observe them, photograph them without having to actually take footprints out to them and draw more attention to them than we would like. We also have the opportunity to control invasive species, to be able to manage when we have outbreaks, and then also to locate trash and debris that occurs on occasion in our preserves. Recent progress, we've also been able to host some of the events, some of the training events that Chief Walker mentioned. South Mountain Park was the site of one of those locations for a training where search and rescue trainings happen, which we really value as the Parks Department with the number of hikers that we have. Anything we can do to help our first responders rescue people quicker is greatly appreciated. Also shown on this video in the top left, we recently reopened the South Mountain Environmental Education Center at South Mountain Park, and we were grateful to the fire department for flying some footage that shows on a screen there so people who visit get an idea of some of the things they'll be able to see at South Mountain Park. Also, a few weeks ago, the police department helped us. We have a situation at Papago Park where we have a lot of invasive plants that are invading Papago Park and some of the ponds there. So shown here on screen is one of the aerial photographs they're able to take. We're able to zoom into those photographs and get an idea of where the invasive plants are. And this allows us to look at it in 2 dimensions, as you can see here. But on the next slides, I'll show you that we can also identify the volumes of plants that we're dealing with. So using simple GIS tools, you can draw polygons around one of these outbreaks of invasive species. And then from that, we can get a better idea of the volume of plant material that is there. So this is like 8 cubic yards of plant material. So before we even go out there with our crews, we'll be able to have a really good idea of how much plant material really needs to be removed. And that's a small kind of sample, that little outbreak, but there's another area. This is pond 2, that was pond 3, the previous. And there's some areas where it's much larger. And this tool helps us to be able to identify problem areas quickly and be able to make sure we have the needed resources and crews available to take care of it. So then also, this flight, it's an amazing technology. This flight took all of 5 minutes, and then as a result of that, you upload the photos and the data to the cloud, and you get a 3D model, a point in time of what Papago Park looked at that point. And as a property or park manager, this is a really beneficial tool for us in the future as we look at what it was at that point and then what it looks like in the future. We'll be able to compare these year after year. Also, we can use that 3-dimensional data to draw cross sections like this. There are other ways to visualize what's going on. So this red line on the top draws a line through that 3D model, and then you can see an elevation is drawn there. And this, again, is really helpful as we share some of these concerns and issues with the public and with our park managers to make sure that the situation is realized and we're able to get these types of invasive species outbreaks under control. And this is a kind of concept that we're still working through, but one of the ways that we would manage this invasive species growth is to create sort of digital fences. So these blue outlines indicate areas that we might in the future want to have these reeds there. They do provide good bird habitat, but when they get out of control, like shown in this image, it chokes out the natural flow of the water and isn't actually healthy for the overall effect of the pond. These digital fences would be used in the future so that we can make sure that the reeds stay within those bounds. We can fly this again next year, for example, and make sure that the reeds are staying within the confines that provide for the overall health of the pond. Our application, as I mentioned before, we're a little bit behind fire and police, but that's been actually really beneficial as we've learned a lot of lessons from them. May, we submitted to the Privacy, Security, and Technical Committee. In June, the Executive Committee will meet. and then by late this year, our operations would begin. And that is the end of my part. I'll turn it back over to Chief Walker.
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, that concludes our presentation. We're certainly happy to answer any questions you might have for us.
Thank you all for being here.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir, Councilman Waring.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, Chief, you sent me my office a memo recently about the fires out in the state trust land. So I personally saw one of those fires coming back from door knocking. I think it was in 2019. Your trucks weren't even there yet, but somebody had called it in. They were in short order. A lot of times, in conjunction with the fires, you're finding, of course, homeless encampments. So I receive a lot of complaints. There's one constituent, I don't know if he'd want me to use his name, but you know, he's either driving by or what have you. He sees people out there camping on the state trust land. It has been my understanding that we have to ask for permission to send police or anyone else, because it's state trust land, out to look for these encampments. But you're using the drones over these same properties, at least that's my understanding. And I don't think anything was mentioned about, unless I missed it, about getting permission from the state. You're able to do it immediately. Am I understanding that right?
So, Madam Chair and Councilman Waring, that's correct. When a fire occurs, it's an emergency. We already have in place relationships with BLM, State Land, State Forestry Department. SRP has some property in there as well in the city of Phoenix. So because we have those relationships and it's an emergency, we don't have to get approval to fly in there or fly the UAV over that area in that situation.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair, Chief. So when it's an emergency like that, you don't have to ask. You can just go react. I never thought to ask that question. I guess that's obvious. Let me ask it this way, though. Can police fly their drones when we get one of these reports about an encampment if there's not a fire? So I guess that's a question for police.
Councilman Waring, yes, our direction has been that wherever legally police officers can be, our drones can be as well. So if we are legal to be there, our drones can be.
But my understanding has been you can't just go out in state land. You have to ask permission.
Councilman Waring, we would not take enforcement action on state land. We would only take enforcement action in the city of Phoenix.
And then flying the drone. I get a report. We identify it as state land. This has happened quite a few times. Ask Inger Erickson. She probably gets tired of my text. It hasn't happened relatively recently, but by that I mean the last couple of months. But it's definitely something that we hear about 6-7 times a year is my guess over the last few years. So what I'm asking is I get a report that there is a homeless encampment that was visible from the road, but maybe not obvious. The fella who's called these in the past, you know, he's like, well, I mean, there's not really streets exactly, so he's trying to sort of ballpark it. What I'm asking is, could you send the drones up instead of us guessing? Because that's also happened where they've gone out and not found anything. Then he has to like literally go out and guide the people once we get the permission from state land to go out and find the encampment. Trying to sort of simplify this process. So can you send drones up to look, or because it's state land, you can't?
Maybe I could clarify. So if we were to get a report of an encampment on state land, but we don't know, the person who reports it to us doesn't know exactly where it is, but Councilman Waring would like to know exactly where it is. Can the police department send up their drones to determine an exact location on state land of an encampment in a non-emergency situation? So there's not a fire, there's nothing else going on. It's just a citizen reporting that there's an encampment on state land. Would police be allowed to fly the drone to provide an exact location of that encampment?
I believe that we would. The drone usage is controlled by FAA airspace, and so if we were legally there and we could fly, yes, we could if requested. But normally we do not take enforcement action unless it's within the city of Phoenix. So in that particular example, if it was not within the city, generally it would be somebody requesting assistance for that, and then we generally take each request on a case-by-case basis.
So I'm going to play this out a little bit, Councilman Waring. So he gets his complaint from a citizen that it's on state land. We forward that to the state land department, and the state land department says, hey, we'd really like to know exactly where it is, Phoenix Police Department. Would you please fly over our land to let us know where this encampment is? Then might you do that?
Yes, that's certainly something that we could do, given we're allowed to by FAA rules and airspace regulations.
Okay. Does that help, Councilman Waring?
Honestly, I sense some uncertainty with this answer. So in basic fairness, since I guess I snuck up on you guys, maybe you could go research it. Maybe I'm not stating it as clearly as I should. I don't know how else to state it. But maybe you guys could go back because, you know, I guess for me, if you're saying you can't go out on state land, I'd be surprised if you could fly the drone there. I don't know what the FAA would have to do with it, unless by an airport and they're blocking out the area or something. So I kind of think you should probably go back and research this and then come back with an answer at our next meeting, or I'd like it before then, because frankly, this comes up all the time. To the point of my question, so these encampments, Chief Walker, tend to lead to fires. That's happened, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, I apologize. Could you restate the question?
Yeah, the encampments, the homeless encampments, sometimes produce fires that you have to then rush out there to fight, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilman Waring, that is correct. There can be times where a fire could be started by the human activity in the area.
Yeah.
And I can provide a little bit of context to the conversations. That I can apologize. A little bit of context to your previous question. So when we identified those homeless encampments in that area, once the fire was out, we have worked and are working with our City of Phoenix Office of Homelessness Solutions, the BLM, which owns land in there, state land, SRP, and the City of Phoenix property in there to identify this issue and really try to be more now proactive to address and provide the support and assistance to these individuals and get them into a better location for them to prevent future fires, to prevent this issue. The issue does come down, for instance, on the fire code enforcement as well as Commander Regan said, it's an enforcement issue. Even if we identify if it's state land has the enforcement authority, whether it be fire code or criminal code, it's up to them what they may or may not want to do. So we are trying to work and put together a collaborative group to address this issue holistically because there are so many entities involved. And we can certainly update you. We now have the Office of Emergency Management within the fire department, and this is one of the tasks we've tasked that group with is in this brush area, but also this homelessness issue in that area, how we can address this better so we can prevent these fires in the future.
So, Madam Chair, I'll try to boil my concern down a little more. You've got people camping out in the desert when it's 110. Citizens are seeing it and calling it in. It takes us kind of a long time to respond because all the hoops we got to jump through. And then sometimes big fires get started. Now, the implication of the fire is we got to pay Chief Walker and his friends to go out and fight the fire, which isn't cheap. Lives are at risk when you're out there fighting fires. We got to pay for drones. All of it's expensive for the taxpayer. Then I actually saw one of these fires, as I said before. I mean, it's a lot of smoke. That's bad for the environment. I've also been sent pictures of these encampments and the trash that is left all over. Also bad for the environment. And then ultimately, these properties are going to be sold and the money is going to go to fund schools. I don't know if the properties themselves could be damaged or devalued, but to the extent that that's possible, that takes money out of schools. Since I'm pretty sure we're all in favor of a good environment, safety for residents, whether they're with or without homes, and we're pro-schools, letting this situation go on is nuts. So I don't know how state land, I mean, it seems like every time it's just jumping through more hoops. I would ask specifically for either an update about state land not wanting us out there with police, trying to get folks off of there before they start a fire or before they create such a mess that somebody else has to go clean up in terms of trash. It would be nice to be a little more proactive because I get these calls all the time. And as you wrote in your memo to me just a week or so ago, Chief, there's been quite a bit of fire damage. So I don't think I'm being compassionless or non-empathetic or unreasonable to say this really needs to stop. So now that we've got this drone technology, the point of my question to police was it would be really helpful if we could use it proactively to identify this before we don't need the drones anymore because they're big plumes of smoke to identify the problem. I just, at some point, I just don't even know how to explain this to people who are constituents who might be I called this in and you didn't do anything and then there was a fire? What the hell, Jim? I don't know. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think it's being compassionless. I don't think it's anything other than common sense. You just can't let this behavior go on any more than you can let people take a dump right outside City Hall. You just can't have it. So whatever policy you need to make sure that's not going to happen, then that's what you need to do. So I would appreciate it if you guys would go get together. And I would also think, ancillary point, I would argue that the drones could help Cynthia's team in the parks identify where people are ODing and stuff at night when they don't have, people available to go to every single park, which they don't at this point. None of the current policies really seem to be protecting or valuing life very much. For all the talk about how, jail would be compassionless, it seems like it would be a lot better than the alternative of an OD death, lonely and alone in a park or in a state trust land plot. So we could debate that all day. I'm just saying, I'm asking, because this has come up so many times. I don't know how many calls, but it's been a couple dozen, probably more. I'd like something that I can tell people, this is what we're going to do. You don't have to go out there, like a Sherpa and show people where the homeless encampment is. You can say, hey, I think it's in this area. We can send up the drone. It can be identified and clean up before some tragedy happens. So that's what I'm asking. I hope it was clear. And I'd like a report on it, Madam Chair, at some point in the future, if we can get it. And I understand you got to work with the governmental agencies. And if the report is, nope, they told us we can't go out there at all until there's a fire, that's something reporters might like to know, because that doesn't seem very well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. We will indeed get follow-up from police and fire on a relationship with Arizona State Trust Land or Land Department on how we operate on state trust land within the city of Phoenix limits. I, like Councilman Waring, have large swaths of state trust land, and if we can be preventative and proactive as opposed to reactive, I'm sure we'd all like that. So they will provide us hopefully an update via email to the committee because we won't meet again until September, but then we can have a follow-up in the fall, Councilman Waring. Okay, I'm getting head shaking and smiles from those who are in attendance. I just want to say thank you for bringing this update. It is incredible to see all the work that police and fire have been able to do with these drones, the safety of not just our citizens, but also our staff. So, and I look forward to getting to see what Parks gets to do, as you guys come more fully on board. I appreciate that. And then with that, we're going to put train derailment on a future agenda. I like to try to keep us on time, and we're a few minutes after, but we have had a lot of good information today, and I appreciate everybody's hard work. Are there any future agenda item requests besides the one we've had? Hearing
Hey,
none.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
I think
yes.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I think you already know, and I think it's already scheduled for September, but we were going to talk about security on the light rail. I think that's already done, though, right? That's already on there?
Yes, sir, it is on there. We will talk about that in September.
Okay, perfect.
Wonderful.
Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. And with that, we are adjourned today. Thank you all.